Do you know what you actually need to start making cheese at home? It's an important question because if you are not properly set up for cheese making, you'll spend a ton of money on unnecessary ingredients and tools, get frustrated by all the overcomplicated recipes and processes, and then the worst case scenario will happen. You'll quit before you even start. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 4 essential ingredients, the 3 simple tools, and the 1 thing money can't buy, so you can start making cheese with confidence without wasting time or cash. So, what do you need to begin making cheese? Well, not much. I've discovered that most recipes rely on the same 4 ingredients, and one of them is so basic it hardly even counts as an ingredient. If you're serious about learning how to make cheese, I have built a workshop that shows how to make 5 kinds of cheese from 1 pot of milk in a single morning. The link is below the video. So, what are those 4 basic ingredients? Well, you can probably guess the first one. Just as bread requires flour, cheese requires milk. So before you start, it's important that you establish your milk source. It can be milk from a goat, a sheep, a cow, yak, buffalo, camel, whatever. Or you can get pasteurized milk from the grocery store. But whatever you choose, you gotta work that out first. Now, fresh, unprocessed milk or raw milk is easier to work with and it makes more flavorful cheeses. That's what I work with. Right now, we're milking 2 cows. But store milk can work wonderfully too, as long as you make a couple small tweaks, which I cover in my other videos and in the workshop. Now, how much milk do you need? Well, a good rule of thumb is 1 gallon of milk yields 1 pound of pressed aged cheese. And for softer cheeses, you'll get about double that. So if you want to make a 4-pound cheddar, then you'll need about 4 gallons of milk. Now, we all know where to get milk, but buying the next ingredient feels a little bit more intimidating. The first time I ordered it, I felt like I was buying a magic juice from a cave-dwelling wizard. It actually made me a little bit nervous. But in truth, this ingredient is no stranger than vanilla or rolled oats or cashews, things that I take for granted because I'm familiar with them. So what is this exotic ingredient? I'm talking about rennet, an enzyme that coagulates the milk for pressed aged cheeses. It generally comes in liquid form, you store it in the fridge, and it's actually pretty economical, about the cost of a good vanilla extract. And like vanilla, with rennet you use just a small amount. For 8 gallons of raw milk, you would use 1 teaspoon of rennet. So 1 bottle lasts for months and makes hundreds of pounds of cheese. Now, the 3rd ingredient is where beginners often get overwhelmed. There are all sorts of variations of this ingredient, and the names are made up of numbers and letters that mean nothing to beginning cheesemakers and to many experienced cheesemakers for that matter. I'm talking about the culture. The culture's job is to acidify the milk. See, milk is sweet. Tastes sweet, and the starter culture has bacteria that eats that sugar and converts it into lactic acid and breaks down the proteins and the fats and blah, 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 blah. You don't need to worry about all that. The point is, culture primes the milk for the rest of the cheese making process. So think of culture as the starter pistol at a race. It kicks things off. But here's a secret. You don't need a single one of those fancy powders with strange number names. In fact, you can make all kinds of delicious cheeses, from long-aged Alpine-style cheeses to cheddars to Goudas to Jacks to Colbys, without a single one. What do you need? Just a quick trip to the dairy aisle of your local grocery store for some buttermilk or plain yogurt. 2 examples of living cultures that are accessible, reliable, and inexpensive. And then you're all set. I'm telling you, cheese making does not have to be expensive. But there is one more ingredient that is absolutely imperative. It plays an enormous role in controlling the bacteria, molds, and the development of flavors and the texture of the final cheese. But it's so basic and so common that in many cooking recipes, it's just assumed. And yes, I'm talking about salt. Think of salt as the referee in a game, making everyone behave so that the game can be enjoyed. Similarly, salt controls a cheese's development. Depending on when you add it and in what quantity, it will impact the final product differently. Just to give you an idea of how much you'll typically need, it generally takes about 1 tablespoon of salt or 15 grams to flavor 1 pound of cheese. So those are the 4 basic ingredients. Of course, there are infinite possibilities if you want to get fancy, and that's why cheese making is endlessly creative and delightful. But if you're just starting out, keep it simple. In my workshop, for example, we use just 4 gallons of milk, a half teaspoon of rennet, a cup of plain yogurt, and some salt to make 5 unique, delicious cheeses, plus a couple special treats. Now, let's talk about equipment. Some cheese making tools can feel intimidating at first. They're not things that are normally found in ordinary kitchens. But once you've used them a few times, they're gonna feel as common and as necessary as a mixing bowl or a measuring cup, which is why I tell beginners to skip all the extra stuff and just focus on 3 basic things. First, you'll need a pot that's big enough for your milk. If you're gonna use 2 gallons of milk to make a cheese, then you need a 2-gallon pot or one that's slightly bigger. Are you making a cheese from 15 liters of milk? Then you're gonna need a 15-liter pot. Second, you need a thermometer. You can make cheese without one, but most cheese making happens at pretty low temperatures, cool, tepid, warm. So a thermometer eliminates confusion. An instant read meat thermometer is what I use, and a basic one will cost you about $12. And the third thing you need is cheesecloth. Don't overthink this. Any clean, tight weave cotton will work. Pillowcases, hand towels, even cloth diapers. But what about molds and presses and cheese harps and aging boxes? These tools do make the job easier, for sure. And if you decide to get into cheese making with any level of consistency, you're probably going to collect some of them. But when you're starting out, get creative with what you already have. Use a wooden cutting board with a weight on top to create a cheese press, or take leftover yogurt containers and poke holes in them to make molds, like I show you how to do in the workshop. Start simple and you can always upgrade later if you need to. And that brings me to the one thing that is more important than any ingredient or tool that you can buy. Now, this thing might be totally free, but without it, your chances of becoming frustrated and quitting are pretty darn high. Let me show you what I mean. When I first started making cheese, I was not good at it. In fact, I built you a little graph to show you exactly how bad I was. Out of the first 100 cheeses, about 5 were utter failures. They were completely inedible. 25 were not good. 25 were meh, 20 were decent, 20 were pretty good, but only 5, maybe, were swoon-worthy. So to put it another way, 70% were edible. That's a passing grade. I was, for the most part, making cheeses we could eat, but I definitely was not winning any awards. If I had gone into cheese making thinking I was going to be an expert right away, I would have been crushed. See, cheese making is a slow-paced art form. There's a steep learning curve, and mistakes are inevitable. So it's imperative that you fix 3 simple truths at the forefront of your mind. 1, cheese has been made for centuries. No running water, no fancy gear, no Amazon Prime. You don't need perfection, you just need to do the work over and over again. 2, the goal is preservation. At its core, cheese making is not about exotic cultures and cutesy molds. It's about turning milk into nourishing food that lasts. 3, you will mess up. You'll overcook the curds, you'll forget the salt, maybe you'll spill some soup into the cheese pot. Rage hurl the flops to the chickens, take a deep breath, and then try again. It will get easier. Over time, the successes become more frequent, the failures become less common. My graph for my second set of 100 cheeses is completely different. I'm still making mistakes, but I'm making less of them. So that final one all-important thing that you need to keep in your mind is perspective. You have to go in with the right mindset, or you're gonna get super frustrated and discouraged. Cheese making isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about showing up again and again until one day you cut into a wheel, taste it, and it's exactly what you expected. Delicious. And that's when you realize that something has shifted. You're no longer surprised when the cheese turns out well, because making good cheese has become your new normal. Now, there is one more area that trips beginners up, and that's the cheese making process itself. With so many steps and variations, it can feel impossible to keep it all straight, which is why I developed a 5-step system that breaks the process into manageable chunks so you can get your bearings faster. So check out that video next, and happy milk slinging.